Hi everyone, I wanted to welcome you to a several part presentation here that I wanted to go over. I got some original thought here that uh, I'm gonna review over the next, I don't know, 10-20 minutes or so. Um, I've split this out across, I don't know, six or so different videos. It's going to take a while to get through all of the material, but I got a lot of original ideas here that I wanted to kind of work through. So the title of this is The Great Collapse of Societies, the Death of Fiat Currencies Forever, and Why Gold is the Center of the Financial Solar System. So a lot of people have been talking about the dollar is going to collapse and fiat currencies are going down, and I know it's kind of a beat to death topic. However, I think the concept that's going to come out of all of this is once the fiat system is doomed to fail at some point, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, whenever that does happen, I believe the lessons that you're going to see in this series of videos are going to keep fiat currency from ever happening again. So with that, let's go through some of the slides here. So the overall theory, I'm going to read through some of these things and provide some commentary. The overall theory I have here is that gold is the center of our financial solar system and is the best form of money to store what I call financial energy. Financial energy is governed by four forces similar to the four fundamental forces in physics. Due to dysregulation in the system, fiat currencies are eventually going to approach zero as measured in gold. Once understanding financial energy and the forces that govern these systems, no future society will ever use fiat or unbacked currency again. So that's a pretty big theory that I'm going to be unpacking here. What are some of the big picture concepts in this? Like I said, this is a 5-part series that I'm going to have after this, but part 2 is actually split into 2 sections because it's a pretty big topic. But the first part of this is gold. I'm going to basically go through how all price information should be going through gold, as gold's been the center of the financial system for 5,000 years. Part 2, I'm going to go over the concept that I call financial energy. You've heard it. Many people talk about this. However, I think they've been talking about it errantly and talking about this financial energy in the terms of like fossil fuels and moving rocks. And I'm going to actually kind of go into this whole concept and kind of work this out a little bit. So I mentioned how economies run on this financial energy, and this is properties very similar to physical energy. And I'm going to explore the question of what is financial energy. Part 3, I'm going to define the ecosystem rules, basically how economies are separate ecosystems. And I'm also going to apply how the four forces of the universe concepts can kind of then be parlayed into rules of ecosystems within economics. So I make some parallels there, and none of this stuff is going to be a one-for-one. So some of you guys out there, MIT physics guys, just relax a little bit. I'm trying to make some parallels here. You guys can work out the math and tell me where I'm wrong, but I'm just trying to make some general realizations of how energy works, of picking up a rock versus having an apartment building complex built. So part 4 here, I'm also going to go into how fiat currencies approach zero value. I got some nice charts and spreadsheets and topics that we can cover with that. Lastly, I'm going to go through how this whole system has been breaking down through dysregulation. By breaking the rules of physics, so to speak, the economic physics here I'm talking about, it creates dysregulation in the systems, which has led to systemic collapse. So I'm going to show that there's a lot of different things that are affected by this. Like, for instance, we talk about the wealth disparity between the uber rich guys versus, Joe Schmo, Joe Sixpack, if you will. How did that wealth gap become so great? And I'm going to talk about the dysregulation which led to all of that. So some of the general observations here when I was putting this together, I'm just going to read through a couple of these. Financial energy is in the system and stored in 3 asset classes as a financial battery. Financial energy can perform work. So another one here is the fundamental forces of the universe can also apply to financial energy. With gold, expansion correction cycles are natural economic fundamentals and demonstrates gold relationship as money. And the big concept with that is that everything, I'm seeing that over the course of several thousand years, everything appears to be priced in gold. And when things are priced in gold, there's all these natural expansions and contractions of economies that make this like a lung breathing, and it's a self-regulated system. And when we come in and just dump all kinds of fake monopoly money around, it breaks everything. So fiat currencies then try to artificially add financial energy into the system and fail, and often need an invisible hand to keep things stable. Eventually, fiat currencies all go to zero because of this. Lastly, the side effects of the dysregulation of the system can also be observed. So I'm observing things that could have been caused by this. I know you're going to go into causation versus correlation, but I'm going to try and unpack a root cause of all of this. Now, it may not be a root cause, but it could be a side effect of it. So I'm going to look through that with some of the observations downstream from what changed in 1971. So what are some of the methods that I use to come to my conclusions here? Well, first of all, I start off with a lot of wild speculation and original ideas on financial energy and gold at the center of the financial universe, or financial solar system, if you will. So I know that gold's been money forever, and I know it's been the center of a lot of topics regarding economics. But I'm looking at this kind of like I'm not a religious person, but if you will, but God's money. I know I've heard Robert Kiyosaki talk about it as God's money, and it just seems so natural, and things just have been evaluated in gold for so long. So that's one thing. I actually saw a newsletter that I subscribed to. I put out a huge blog post on this, and about a week and a half later, this newsletter came out with almost the identical concept that I had. A lot of the wording was very similar, and it's possible it's a coincidence. It's possible I'm saying something that a lot of people have talked about over hundreds of years. I don't know. I did some quick research on this. I haven't seen much, so you know, it's very hard these days to come up with original ideas. Somebody 300 years ago could have come up with this. There could be all kinds of papers that talk about this, but anyway, on my end, I just wanted to talk about it, how I feel that the financial world revolves around gold, and the concept of trying to make it revolve around fiat has been breaking everything. And so the other thing was that I have some wild speculation, and I'm building out this concept of financial energy, which is different than what a lot of people are talking about when it's like it's not necessarily measuring the gallons of gasoline you put into a piece of equipment to move rocks and dig something out. It gets a little bit more in depth in that. My concept of financial energy more or less talks about moving processes, people, and technology as opposed to moving rocks around. So the big thing here, that's the big thing that I think that can open up discussion with people. There's no right or wrong about this. I mean, I'm not putting this out there to put a Bible out there like gold is the center and everything. I'm throwing an idea out there. I want to show you some evidence, and it can also then, hey, that kind of makes sense. This is why we should not be going to fiat currency. This is why we shouldn't be doing unbacked crypto. We need to have gold at the center of all of this. So next, I compare attributes of physical energy and compare the concept of financial energy with that. So with that, it's kind of like I'm looking at what people think of with physics and energy and how they could be misinterpreting what you're capturing in something. Like I know Steve St. Angelo talks about when you're digging gold out of the ground, you're capturing that energy in the gold. And he's talking mostly about like diesel energy in trucks digging it out. I know Michael Saylor was talking about when you're mining Bitcoin, that you are capturing the energy that are used in the data centers to create the calculations. And to me, that's kind of like it's a giant hamster wheel for creating Bitcoin. It's not necessary to do that. But the concept with that was using physical energy to get a token out of it. And I'm going to show how it's really not, there's no point in doing it. Next is understanding gold's role as a price maker, where if currencies collapse, you can make the argument that the first thing that gets valued is gold, and then everything gets valued off of gold. People just don't create a new currency and then all of a sudden, they know a carton of milk is worth 10 units. Everything will start with gold and commodities and then work from there. And I would, if anybody's got research on that or knows how when societies collapse and governments collapse and currencies collapse, how they reprice things out of that. But what you can make an observation on is that gold will probably be one of the first things, along with silver and copper and aluminum and lumber and timber and all of these things that you need to build products with. We're probably going to be the things that are priced first. Next, I'm going to go in a little bit of Gresham's Law. Probably everyone that's watching this knows what Gresham's Law is, so I don't want to beat it to death. But the concept of some of these videos, for those of you that are within my silver and gold community, I'm trying to make a lot of these videos that can be outreach towards people that might be in the financial system that aren't necessarily in our echo chamber. So when I cover some of these things, I'm not necessarily trying to, beat you over the head with Gresham's Law, but, maybe somebody that you share this with that is an economist, starts to hear some of these things. And he probably knows what Gresham's Law is too. But next, I take a look at how charts perform with looking at unbacked currencies and how they approach zero. I'm going into something called an asymptotic equation. And when you start to see how this works over 40, 50, 60, 100 years, as opposed to year, it opens up your eyes and you can't unsee it. Lastly, the method here is that I see some downstream effects from what happened in 1971, but I'm going to try and attribute the root cause of a lot of these societal issues to the dysregulation of economic systems when we introduced fiat currency into the system in 1971. So with that, lastly, I'm just going to go over a couple of my influences for this. Steve Santangelo kind of sparked my, he sparked the idea for me to just start hammering a keyboard on this on a blog when he talked about digging gold out of the ground, capturing energy. And the big concept here is that, the energy captured, the energy used to create gold 100, 150 years ago could have been a lot more than it is today. Meaning that maybe you needed 150 to dig with shovels out, and then all of the calories that they consumed in order to do stuff, and all the farmers that you needed to create to consume calories to create that food. There's downstream energy calculations that are crazy if you're talking about physical energy. Now today you have a guy that's operating a giant caterpillar machine that can dig stuff out and run it through equipment. So maybe there's a lot less labor. Maybe there's now diesel fuel needed. So if you actually went through the math of all of that stuff, you might find that gold that was created 200 years ago or 300 years ago required a lot more energy to make it than today. So is that gold that was made 300 years ago worth more than it is today? That's where my brain started saying, you know what? That's not an accurate way of describing this. So I went into this concept of financial energy, where if you look at it big picture, if you're digging gold out of the ground 300 years ago, the amount of effort that you're taking to put into this needs to be less than what you're getting out of it. So if 200 years ago, you spent $100 or whatever it is to dig an ounce of gold out of the ground, and you get 200 back, your return on investment is 50%, is what, 100% on that. Well, the concept of today is if you're digging gold out of the ground, it's $900 all in sustaining costs, and maybe it's $1,800 to sell it, and there's your 100%. Now, obviously, I know about margins and taxes and all that other fun stuff. The concept here is that what gets you to dig it out of the ground in the first place is evaluating the ROI. You're not caring about the diesel fuel that's needed for it. That's a component of it. But the concept is that anything that moves in our economy needs to have an ROI. So I'm going to go much further into this, but he got my brain going. as to when you're trying to capture energy in something, what are you actually capturing? And you're actually capturing the math of what you put into it is a lot less than what you get out of it. So, and you can just look at it on the effort it takes. Now you can also go make the argument that machines are doing the work that 100 people did, years ago, and those machines take a lot of people to build those machines, and they needed calories in order to work. You can go down through all those things, but just a quick general observation would tell me that things that were created many years ago were less efficient. And when things are less efficient, it's going to take more physical energy to create it. So are things that were created 100, 200, 300 years ago more valuable than today? So again, I can't get the math going here. Maybe some of you physics guys can really start digging into this, but the concept here was also with financial energy, you're capturing processes and people's academic abilities and college education, and people put money into those college educations, and you're harnessing some of that energy into creating efficiencies to then dig it out of the ground for less. So Steve was very big in getting me to start writing about this. Mike Maloney, you're the hidden secrets of money. I'm going to talk about that 100 million times, but in particular, he had another video on wealth cycles, and he was showing waves about how things are related to each other, and he talks about economic energy. I think it was in part 6. So what I'm looking at here is what I wanted to do was kind of complete his thoughts a little bit more, because I think he was also going down the road of the oil that's needed to create something. But what I'm trying to look at is put these things in non-denominal terms. I call these things financial jewels, like jewelry, and that's kind of a play on words with joules of electricity, which is spelled differently. But I'm playing around here with a unit of financial energy. I'm calling a joule, which jewelry, shiny things. And last, Rafi, I've exchanged a few emails with him, but he talked about Mises regression theorem, and that was also very big in how fiat dollar is still sticking around. So I wanted to thank these guys here for at least sparking my brain into creating these concepts here. Now, I'm open to be right, wrong, whatever it is, but again, just imagine, guys, if we're sitting at a coffee shop and we're kind of bullshitting around a little bit, and we just want to have some fun with some of this. So don't try and nail me to a wall on this, and try and just have some fun with this. Try to work my thinking a little further, or tell me where I might be wrong. But with that, that's the end of the introduction here, and we'll start up with the 5 parts in a few minutes. Thanks.